Funding for Martha's Sewing Room is provided by Parsons Cabinet Company, YLI Corporation, Fiskars Incorporated, and Clotilda of Stevens Point, Wisconsin.
Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to my sewing room. Since this is the first of our series, I'd like to share with you that we will be covering everything from very beginning to super advanced French sewing by machine, plus many, many more techniques and ideas on this first series. Let's begin at the beginning. French sewing by machine, the beginning French sewing by machine, is simply butting lovely heirloom sewing items together. Simply zigzagging. It is so very easy to do and so much fun. This lovely lady's linen skirt features beginning French sewing by machine on the skirt. Very tailored, lovely sophisticated slit up the front, and features just very easy French sewing down around the hem. French sewn dresses can be as elaborate or as plain as you want them to be. Simply butting laces together and zigzagging on the top, and butting laces together and zigzagging on the bottom also. This lovely little dress, once again very, very easy to make, features simply gathered lace zigzagged onto the collar and lace straight stitched onto the skirt. One of the items that we love to make so much in French sewing by machine is christening gowns, baptismal gowns, blessing dresses, and baby dedication dresses. This little dress would fit for all of those occasions. The lovely pin tucking up in the bodice, very simple to sew, and then the elegant skirt, which can be made as plain or as fancy as you would like to make it. And then, of course, I certainly will not forget a sweet little baby bonnet for any of these special occasions. The little blue Swiss batiste dress has very simple work in the neckline, pin tucks, traveling on down to the skirt, very easy things to do on the skirt, simple butting together and zigzagging, entredot to flat lace, lace to lace. And this little ribbon rosette, this lovely little pink ribbon rosette up here on the shoulder, as I researched historically, why did the children have these little ribbon rosettes on sometimes? I found that this little rosette indicated in a picture that it was the birthday girl. It could be the birthday girl or indicate any special occasion, but I'm going to show you how to make one of those a little bit later in the show. Simple to sew, fun to sew, ever so elegant. I would like to share some very easy techniques with you. There are only 5 basic techniques for beginning French sewing by machine. French and English laces are what we primarily use. These happen to be French I'm showing you on the teaching board. Step number 1 involves butting 2 pieces of lace together and simply zigzagging them. Pretty easy, huh? Step number 2 involves a product from Switzerland that looks a little bit like a railroad track for ants. It's called entredot, entredeur, entredou. I will call it entredot. Butting lace to entredot is very easy after you trim off the batiste seam allowance, then simply butt the lace edge to the entredot and zigzag. Putting gathering lace to entredot is very easy also. I simply trim away the top seam allowance of the entredot, pull a string that is built into the French lace, pull a string to gather it, butt it to the entredot, and zigzag it. This little technique many people call Martha's Magic. This is an easy and very neat way to attach lace edging to the edge of a fabric. I leave about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch of fabric exposed. You see my lace is not all the way to the top of the fabric. Then I set a wider zigzag than normal, maybe about a 3 1/2 width and a 1/2 length or up to a 1 length. and I zigzag going off the edge of the fabric and rolling the fabric into the lace. And if you will look up here, I will show you what it looks like after it's finished. It makes a neat and very tight way of attaching lace edging to the bottom of a piece of fabric. This entre-deux has two more techniques I'd like to share with you. Entre-deux to flat fabric. I will stitch in the ditch of the entre-deux. The black stitching goes right beside the ditch of the entre-deux. Then I trim the seam allowance not all the way to the edge of the entre-deux, but about 1/4 of an inch I leave, and then I go back and zigzag this seam allowance only. I do not go into the holes of the entre-deux. So I zigzag, traveling next to the edge of the entre-deux. Here is what it looks like after it's finished. The last technique is entre-deux to gathered fabric. This particular fabric has 2 rows of gathering run into it. Put the entre-deux on top of the gathered fabric, stitch in the ditch, trim, and zigzag over this little seam allowance part only. Do not go into the holes of the entre-deux. This is what it looks like when it's finished, entre-deux to gathered fabric. Those are the basic and beginning techniques of French sewing by machine. I would like to show you next a lovely quilt square. Heirloom sampler quilts are very easy to make and very, very elegant. We'll have a square per program. The first square today will be beginning French sewing by machine on this lovely quilt with the wonderful lace all gathered around the edge. Very simple techniques on this quilt square, which I would like to demonstrate for you now. The first technique is lace to lace. I have 2 pieces of lace butted together. Notice I do not start sewing on the very edge of the lace. It is always smart to move in just a little bit before beginning sewing. I guess you're wondering about this stick that I have in my hands. And by the way, a straight and zigzag sewing machine is all you need for heirloom sewing, any of the most beginning or the most advanced. This little stick I have in my hand while I'm zigzagging this together is a bamboo skewer. It's the proper name. I really call it a shish kebab stick. It is so nice to have a little stick to kind of play with out here. Now, why do I use a shish kebab stick rather than a pin or a seam ripper? Well, I will just tell you. If this sewing machine hits a shish kebab stick and the needle goes in, it probably will not damage my sewing machine. And if my sewing machine were to hit a a metal object of some kind, it truly could damage the sewing machine. Butting 2 pieces of lace together in zigzag is about the hardest thing I think there is to do in heirloom sewing, and you can see how easy this is, of course. All right, I'm going to remove this and let you see how pretty it is. Just 2 pieces of lace butted together and zigzagged. Step number 1. Step number 2 is a piece of lace butted together to entre-deux. Here is my strip of entre-deux. Here is the batiste seam allowance, which I have trimmed away, because when I butt lace to entre-deux, I trim away the seam allowance. Now remember, I'm not going to start at the very edge. I'm going to move in just a little bit to start. Once again, my little shish kebab stick, and only straight and zigzag is all you will need. I'm going to make that a little bit wider, just a little bit wider. Actually, I adjust my width and length, sort of. I do about a 2.5 to 3 width and about a 1/2 to 1 length when I'm doing these beginning stitches. I needed to go, I needed to move on over nearly to 3. The length and the width really don't matter as long as you go over and catch the heading of the lace. Just simply zigzag the 2 together. Very easy to do. Let me show you what I've done. I simply butted the lace to the trimmed entre-deux. Voila, it is finished, and how easy it is. Now, the Martha's Magic trick, and I guess that's one of the reasons that I wrote my first book, was after I discovered this Martha's Magic trick. It is so easy to attach lace to an edge. Here we go. Now I've gone zigzag. This time I'm going to go over to about, a little over a 4. I'm going to stay on the same length. I'm nearly up to a 1 on the length and a 4 on the width. Now I have left a little bit of fabric exposed, about, not quite a 1/4 of an inch of fabric exposed. My zigzag will go off on the heading of the lace and off into the sewing machine. It will not go into the fabric at all, and it will roll. I don't think I need my shish kebab stick on this one. It will make the most beautiful rolled hem. In other words, it pulls the fabric edge into the lace and makes it such a nice tight stitch that will not pull apart. And this is absolutely one of my very favorite stitches to do in heirloom sewing. I have taught this all over the English-speaking world, and everywhere ladies say, Martha, I really like that technique. Here is what it looks like. A rolled edge rolling the fabric into the edge. Those are the basic simple techniques. Heirloom sewing can be used for women's clothing as well as children's clothing, as well as doll clothing and items for your home. Here is the principle behind how this blouse, this is a simple shell, short sleeves, a very tailored shell. How does this blouse become this blouse? Same pattern, except we have a beautiful heirloom sewing treatment down the front of this blouse with lace, a Swiss hand loom, entredot. Well, let me just show you. Look at the big picture up here with me, please. This is the fabric of the blouse on either edge, all of the goodies which I will put together using just the techniques which I have shared with you already. The big picture is, after this has been all put together, all of the sewing has been done, and a fabric has been created, I then put my blouse pattern on top of this newly created fabric and cut out my blouse. Heirloom sewing is not just for people, it's also for dolls. I love to make doll clothes, and I might want to bet that some of you do also. This dress is an heirloom party dress, a to-the-waist heirloom party dress. Our doll clothes fit German dolls, French dolls, modern dolls, and I believe you would enjoy a lot of these clothes for any other type doll that you might have. This dress is classic beginning French sewing. The bodice simply has laces zigzagged together. Entredot gathers the bodice to the front. The sleeve features lovely laces butted together, a sweet little trim with entredot and gathered lace around the sleeve. The very simple tie silk dusty pink skirt has a beautiful treatment at the bottom of the skirt, and we call this a fancy band. When you hear me referring to a fancy band, I will be talking about this segment right here, which is so much fun to make, one of my very favorite things to do. This fancy band simply has laces and entredot butted together, and then Martha's Magic attaches the lace to the bottom of this little ruffle. Here is a close-up of the fancy band. This has entredot, lace, entredot, 3 strips of lace, and on to the top. These are the simple techniques which we referred to earlier that make up this particular fancy band for this sweet doll dress. I have the sweetest trick to show you, which is beautiful not only on a doll dress, but it would be lovely on a child's dress also. Since dolls are tiny, we used silk ribbon for her beading that went up and down the little strips through the skirt and around her sleeve. I took a tapestry needle. I went over 2 bars, under 2 bars in the traditional entredot, over 2 bars, under 2 bars, over 2, under 2, and simply threaded this lovely silk ribbon, and I think this makes one of the sweetest trims for a doll to wear. Let me refresh your memory one time on how this lace was stitched on. Lace to flat edge, I leave just a little bit of fabric, about 1/4, 1/8 of an inch would be okay in some cases, and I zigzagged going off the fabric and over the heading of the lace, which attached the lace where it looks as pretty as can be. On this ruffle, there are 2 rows of gathering threads at the top of the ruffle. I stitched the bobbin in turquoise to give you a little trick right here. When gathering a ruffle, it is easier to gather the bobbin threads. It is easier to pull the bobbin threads. It seems to make the gathering much easier. I've talked a little bit now about silk ribbon embroidery. We used it to run through the doll's entredeaux on her dress. I'd like to share with you now some beautiful stitches on the elegant silk ribbon embroidery technique. It is my privilege today to welcome Kathy Brower as my guest. Kathy is embroidery editor of So Beautiful magazine. Welcome to the program, Kathy.
Thank you, Martha.
Kathy, everywhere I go, ladies look at the beautiful samples and the pillows and they say to me, now Martha, what is that embroidery? And I say, well, that's silk ribbon embroidery. And then they say, oh, I want to learn how to do that. So we've invited Kathy to teach you how to do silk ribbon embroidery. Kathy, what kinds of ribbons do you use for silk ribbon embroidery?
Well, Martha, they're all silk ribbons. They all come in a variety of sizes, and I'll show you that later in the show. I'm going to teach the Japanese ribbon stitch today, and I'm going to show you how to do the basic standard stitch for all silk ribbon projects, the straight stitch. I've brought with me a beautiful sample on lace, on this beautiful lace pillow, of some spiderweb roses, which we'll be teaching also in this series. But also I want you to notice the beautiful flowers here are made of a Japanese ribbon stitch, which is a variation of the straight stitch. And these leaves are also straight stitches here. Also, as far as needles and things go, this is called a laying tool, and it's a large-eyed needle used mainly in tapestry and things like that. It's to lay the silk to keep it from twisting while you're doing your stitches. I'm using a size 26 tapestry needle, mainly because it's been a great needle for me on most every stitch I do. I'd like to show you today a great way to thread your needle so that it does not come unthreaded while you're stitching. What you'll do is you'll basically put the thread through the eye of the needle, as I've done here. You'll come back on the thread and you'll puncture the thread, see as I've done, and you'll pull that down, pull the slack out a little bit and pull it over the thread, and it loops around and it keeps the thread from coming out of your needle while you're stitching.
Gosh, that looks like a short piece of thread to me.
It sure is, Martha, and there's a good reason for that.
Okay.
If you use longer than an 8 to 10 inch piece of ribbon, as you're stitching, you'll get through and the ribbon will start fraying and become frazzled. So that's why we use a short piece. I'd like to show you how to do a Japanese ribbon stitch and a straight stitch now. I'll just start here anywhere in the middle of my fabric. Of course, a straight stitch is simply going to be as you do if you do any kind of floss embroidery. It's the same in that kind of embroidery also. And we'll come down. My thread twisted a little there, and if you want your thread to twist, it makes a great stitch also. That's what's so great about silk ribbon. It's very forgiving, and the stitches look wonderful anyway. I'll do another one, and then I'll show you how to do a Japanese ribbon stitch, which makes beautiful leaves. All right, this stitch will be a Japanese ribbon stitch, and what's interesting about this is you'll do almost a straight stitch, but you'll hold the ribbon out and you'll bring the needle through the ribbon and you'll puncture it. And I'm penetrating the thread like so. And when you pull it through, it curls up on the end and it makes a beautiful leaf or a beautiful flower petal.
Let's see that one more time, Kathy.
All right. Grab my needle here and come up.
Okay.
I'll lay my thread flat on the fabric. I'll puncture somewhere, and you can make them larger or smaller, through the center of the silk. Bring it in, and don't pull it too tight, just slightly, and it'll curl up on you.
Well, Kathy, thank you so much, and I will certainly look forward to having you on lots of our programs
Thank you,
to share more of this lovely and elegant and very popular technique right now. Next, we have a project for your home, a beautiful pillow for your bedroom, using the techniques that we've learned earlier in the show. Bolster pillows are so much fun to make. The pillow I have for you today has basic French sewing techniques right in the center, an adorable little double ruffle right here on the end, and it's finished with a perky little ribbon rosette, so easy to make. The first step for making this bolster pillow is to zigzag the laces together, then add the embroidered insertion. The way I got this cute little double ruffle, one ruffle is shorter than the other one. This ruffle, the top ruffle, is about a ½ inch shorter than the double ruffle, and they're stitched together. Putting a bolster pillow together is really not very hard. Just pretend like you're making a sleeve. Here is the double ruffle on the end. Here is the end piece, which has a casing, and you simply make a sleeve and then tie it shut. I'll show you next how to make that sweet little perky ribbon rosette. Ribbon rosettes are also lovingly called frou-frous, so if you hear that name, this is the lovely little ribbon treatment to be worn on the shoulder or worn on a pillow. How do you make a ribbon rosette? About 5 yards of any width ribbon you would like to use. Put a black dot or a pencil mark every 2 inches, all along nearly the whole 5 yards of ribbon. Let me show you how it's stitched. I go down and up on each one of the ribbon, little dots I made on the ribbon, down and up. You see the little loop that's being made there? I go down and up, and I go down and up on the little loops. And here's what it looks like as I travel across the ribbon. And then after the ribbon rosette is made, I can get some little streamers that will make the ribbon rosette have some lovely little streamers. And I just stitch them on the back. If you want knots on your ribbon rosette, when you're doing your little dots up here at the very beginning, simply tie a knot. I love to collect antique clothes. Let's take a trip to my attic and I'll share some of these treasures with you. Welcome to my attic. I call this trunk a grandmother's trunk because actually old clothing was traditionally put into a trunk, and I figured a lot of those ladies must have been grandmothers. Using basic French sewing techniques, as you have learned today, I would like to share with you this lovely blouse. Terribly easy to make, simply beautiful things stitched together. The back really is as pretty as the front. This blouse has one of the most beautiful cuffs on the sleeve that I've ever seen. That sweet little curved point. This would be very easy for you to recreate today also. Sweet and simple is this little girl's midi dress. Beginning and terribly easy French sewing techniques all the way over the dress. One of my favorite christening dresses is one I bought in England. This has beginning French sewing techniques on the bodice coming down. The skirt is very beautiful with a V and the lovely tucks and beginning French sewing techniques with laces, a little ruffle, combining laces and Swiss embroideries. I like to share ideas about women who are volunteering their time with their sewing machines. I recently taught in Utah, and a friend, Mary Lou Broadhead of Sandy, Utah, who is a 4-H leader, told me about some exciting projects which her young 4-H girls are doing in the way of volunteer sewing. Mary Lou writes, each girl is learning to piece, to tie, to machine quilt her own quilt for her hope chest. The girls are also making quilts to donate to the Shriners Hospital in Salt Lake City, Utah. She also shares this summer our 4-H girls will be making scrunchies for the girls of the first grade in their school to use as incentives for their reading program. This group of 4-H girls are called Sassy Sewers. They're third-year sewers, and Mary Lou and all of you Sassy Sewers, congratulations and thank you for your sewing for those less fortunate from the heart. Thank you for joining me today in my sewing room. I've really enjoyed your being here, and I hope to see you next time.
Martha's Sewing Room has been made possible in part by grants from the following companies. Parsons, with 48 years experience building quality sewing machine cabinets. YLI Specialty Threads and Esther's Ribbon Designs, available at finer craft stores everywhere. Fiskars, a tradition of quality since 1649. And Clotilda, for 24 years your supply source for sewing and stitching. Martha's Sewing Room is offering a 266-page program guide which includes patterns, detailed instructions, and additional information related to this 13-part series. The cost is $23.45. The entire Martha's Sewing Room television series is also available on home video. Each tape includes at least 4 programs. The cost per tape is $29.95. To order, call 1-800-547-4176.